my first step ever podcast, and I am Ishani Nigam, your host and producer of the podcast. This podcast is made for all the disruptors around the globe who know that they are made for something, for that one thing, but fear of embarrassment, fear of rejection, the fear of fear itself holds us back at some point in time. But hey, those are the only milestones that if we cross, we are there to take our first steps. So, welcome on this journey with me where I interview people from across the globe so that they can share their story, their challenges, and you know that even you can surpass yours. Well, what are you waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome to the virtual studios of My First Step Ever. Have you ever heard the voice that says the burgers are better at Hungry Jack's? If you're saying ahas, we have that amazing person today in our studios, the amazing voiceover artist. And please join me in welcoming Nathan Jones all the way from Australia. Hi Nathan, welcome on My First Step Ever.
Hi Ashani, it's so good to be here.
I wish I had the drum rolls for introduction, but that is for you. I think your voice is enough to kind of help us with that effect. Okay, so I'd like to introduce you to my listeners before we dive deep into this conversation and kind of uncover and discover who Nathan really is.
Ooh.
Nathan Jones.
Sounds nice. Deep. I like it.
Nathan Jones is an emotion researcher, TEDx speaker, and director of Mood Institute. Now, we will be talking about that. It's a very interesting concept. Formerly one of Australia's most prominent voiceover artists, Nathan was the guy who told you the burgers are better at Hungry Jack's and much more, and helped shape the brand identities of Nickelodeon, I love Nickelodeon, MTV, and Channel 11. And after winning the Australian eChallenge Social Entrepreneurship Award, wow, that's amazing, in 2019, Nathan has been commercializing his research through a PhD in emotion science at the University of Adelaide. Now, this is a very, very interesting combination of studies and also kind of applying it in real time. And how he's doing that is, he has presented his findings at the World Congress on Positive Psychology, Mumbrella 360, the QUT Leadership Coaching Conference, and the University of Southern California. Now, his insights have been featured in Sydney Morning Herald, the Daily Telegraph, Sky News Breakfast, and on and on and on, like everywhere. So I'm very fortunate that you're here, Nathan. Thank you so much for choosing My First Step Ever. And Nathan is sharing his innovative approach to emotional well-being through organizational training, through Mood Institute, and on one-on-one coaching. Now, this is amazing, from a voiceover artist to someone winning an entrepreneurship challenge to doing a research and actually starting their own one-on-one coaching. This is incredible. I think you've progressed immensely in your career so far. But let us take a few steps back, which I always love doing with our guest speakers over here, and ask them that how was the little Nathan like when he was growing up? Where was he and what was his mindset?
Oh, what a question. Ashani, little Nathan was very shy. Little Nathan didn't really feel very comfortable in his own skin. Really, that shapes you as a kid when you don't particularly feel seen or heard or understood by not just the people around you or even the people that are meant to be caring for you, but even yourself. You don't feel like you have a voice or that you're really able to be heard at all. And even worse, I don't even think sometimes when you are maybe a kid like I was growing up and being overwhelmed by everybody else, you don't even really know who you are yourself. What do I like? What's my favorite color? I don't know all of these things. And as a kid, it's really hard to connect with some of these things when, in my case, you're trying to be in damage control, managing everyone around you, making sure that you're holding other people together. I think kids that grow up in those environments like I did, you don't really have much of a sense of self. So my mindset growing up, I think very scared, didn't want to rock the boat too much, because if I did, I might forfeit my chance of being loved by the people that I really needed to love me. So that we got very deep very quickly, Ashani, but you asked a good question. Little Nathan's mindset was a little bit timid, a little bit shy, and probably quite scared.
First of all, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, environment, and that's how you felt. But I'm happy and very, very actually, I think I feel really proud that we are able to share this with people who are listening to us today, because Nathan, a lot of us have gone through, a different kind of upbringing, the kind of environment we had, and I think some of them maybe they can relate with you. So that's why it is so important that when you share this and you're able to put words to those feelings today, they might be able to relate and actually see the way you've progressed, that things can change in your life. And I like to kind of ask something over here, Nathan, like when you were in that phase, and as in when you were growing up, you still held on to those, associations, those feelings, you were scared. What was the first incident ever that helped you move, shift from that mindset, or even made you realize before you shift from that mindset? How was that for you?
That's a beautiful question, and I think you maybe alluded to it in a sense. I think it was maybe something that was always there inside of me. I think I've always had. You've probably heard with mindsets the distinction between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. I think I've actually always had a growth mindset. It was covered up with a lot of fear. I was really scared to dive into things, but there was always that longing and that passion to grow. There was always that real sense that I wanted to push beyond what I knew. And it was actually quite tricky because I think the people around me mostly had quite a fixed mindset. And my father was a minister of a church. We lived in the church next door, and my mother was the doting perfect minister's wife. Well, at least that's what it was when the doors weren't closed, and then it's a whole other story, right? But it is interesting to grow up in that situation where you do want to grow so desperately, but when people around you don't necessarily find that as exciting as you do, it's about trying to keep you smaller rather than opening you up to become bigger. So I think the tipping point for me, I think it was really around music. I was writing a lot of music at the time, and I just think just letting my voice just sing out, and to sing high notes and low notes and loud and soft and fast and slow, and to explore my voice was really therapeutic. And I think that was a bit of a tipping point. I thought, you know what, even if I have to do this in secret, I think I've got a voice, and one day when I'm ready, I reckon I'm going to use it.
This was so amazing to see your journey, how things, like it is very, very, very difficult for anyone who's listening to us. And Nathan, I think you definitely, because you have gone through it, that how much scary it is, to kind of come out of that situation where you feel like you really feel scared about everything, and you feel like you can't really step up and make yourself heard. But then you've brought about a very, very good and very important aspect here for our listeners, for anyone who's today listening to us, is there's a distinction between the mindset. There's a fixed mindset and growth mindset, and it's a very good point that we are addressing over here. And I also like to kind of throw in a bit of what I have experienced so far over here, is that people are, their experiences. Some of them have the capability of kind of imbibing the experience from other people, and they are able to kind of better themselves. But for some people, they are just their experiences. So however it is, unfortunate or fortunately, they are made up of, and that's what. So whatever they have seen, whatever life they have lived, that's the way they feel life is supposed to be lived. But then there are other kind of people who experience life. Probably if you're fortunate enough, you will get those challenging situations, those decision-making situations where you will actually pause for a moment and reflect, hang on, I can think in different way. I can do this in different way. I do not necessarily used to have to be in this particular field, or be with this particular person in this certain environment and act in a certain way. So that's really important that you have brought about the fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Thank you so much, Nathan. And I think you mentioned something very interesting, and I will kind of Now, tap into that. You started secret society of your own. You were the leader, and you were your own follower, and you were your entire world. We don't know what happened behind the curtains over there. How was it like, that experience of your the amazing start of your voiceover journey over there? If you could take us through that, what did you learn, or what did you fail at that really helped you grow from there?
I love that. Look, if I ever write a biography for whatever reason, I think it's going to be called The Secret Society of Nathan. That's a great, and really, I was the only member that I'd ever let inside that club. I was very closed up. Yeah, had my own little ideas there. And I think because of that, I think when we're talking about how I got a start in any kind of career or purpose or profession, it was a little tricky, because when you're so self-sufficient and you are in your own little secret one-person society, it's really hard to ask for help. It's really hard to put yourself out there, because failure isn't an option. When you're in your own secret society, you can fail a little bit, but then when you finally let someone else in or go to the outside, it's got to be perfect, right? It's got to be polished. It's got to be A+. And the idea of letting someone see your B-, letting someone see your C+, it's like, oh my goodness, that can't happen. So you run back to the secret society and you make sure that everything's perfect so you can put it out to the world. But that was a real challenge for me in getting out there, because I had such high ideas and such perfection. It was frustrating. It was like teething when you're a baby and those teeth are coming through. You're like, I want it to be done, but it takes time. And it's exactly, make it happen. And I remember I had my first my first apartment here in Adelaide quite a while ago now. Like anyone, if you've ever had your first place, you want to make it really cool. And so I put a hammock in this kind of it's really like a grandma house, and it had like a greenhouse, but I put a hammock in there and I made it this cool little place to connect. But I remember just lying in that hammock and feeling this overwhelming sense of, and I've never felt anything as strong as I did in that moment. It was like I was going to explode, because there was so much potential in me, but I was so far from getting there. And I remember thinking, I want to, if you know the radio station in Adelaide, it's called SAFM. It's like a pop music station. I'm like, I want to get my voice on SAFM. It was like the height of my dreams.
Lovely.
And I so desperately wanted it, but it was so far from happening. And so it was really interesting to have that longing and that frustration, knowing that my dreams are bigger than reality's allowing for at this moment. But what I can say is that I think over time I learnt to let my C+, my B-, even my C-, get out in public and take those little daily baby steps to be, as I've heard it said before, to be perfectly imperfect, right? To be able to fail a few times and put yourself out there. And in the end, I let go of my dreams of SAFM and I went to just a community station. It was called, and I think it's still going, Life FM. It's actually a Christian religious station.
Amazing.
Borrowing on a lot of my upbringing. I went there and I didn't know how to get in, but I knew that I could help. And so I licked envelopes for about 6 months, kind of jumping in and helping out and mailing things and driving. I got upgraded to driving the radio station. Did a live cross and they heard my voice and they're like, you've got great energy. And then I did some weekend shifts for free. And finally they offered me a paid position to actually get behind the mic and do afternoons. And then I used to do some of the station sponsor reads on the station because they didn't have any money for voiceovers. And I did one for Northeast Mitsubishi in Adelaide at your Mitsubishi Diamond dealer now. And the agency that had the account for Mitsubishi was in South Australia at the time. They heard me and they left a message with the radio station saying they want me to be the voice nationally for Mitsubishi.
Whoa, wow.
I didn't know what that meant at the time. And I went up and said, sure. And then they told me how much to pay them. I'm like, I'm getting paid? What? This is crazy. And so I think after that, it started rolling on. And I'm like, you know what? I keep having to plant seeds, but it felt like finally some of those seeds were growing. I was trying to do music as well. I was putting demos in and that wasn't working. But finally, I moved to Sydney because I thought there's going to be more voiceover work there. And then 2 months after moving to Sydney, I won a music deal, a development deal with Sony Music through a competition that I'd put in like 3 or 4 months beforehand. And all these little things started falling into place. And then it all fell apart, and then it came together again, and then it fell apart and came together. But really, it's just been this journey of finally realizing that the secret society of Nathan is lovely, but no one can live in a closet, right? No one can live in isolation. And interestingly enough, once I moved to Sydney, I was able to actually do the unthinkable, and I was able to come out to my parents as gay. And that's not something that I thought I'd ever be able to do because, religion, you don't really. I mean, thankfully it's changing a lot, and there are a lot of Christians and people of faith that understand that love is love and people are people, but that wasn't the case growing up for me. And so I think there is something to be said about stepping outside of yourself, putting yourself out there perfectly, imperfectly, and planting seeds and seeing what pops up.
This is incredible, Nathan. First of all, I have to tell you that you have such a passionate journey. I mean, I can just see passion written all over. And I can also see that you never left any stone unturned. You gave it your all. You had that belief in yourself. And this is, I think, the basis of from where you started off. And I want to kind of highlight this to our listeners today, that if you have carefully listened to Nathan's journey, he actually had the belief in himself and he kept through that. Of course, I mean, with time, with challenges, we do feel a bit low at times, but I think he kept pushing that envelope every time. And we can see that, getting that break with Mitsubishi is a big, big, big deal. And then Sony TV is even a bigger deal. But I think what was really amazing is that you started off with, at the community radio station, and you did the odd job over there, and then you really got the break that you were looking for. And I'm so happy that, we are also addressing something very, very essential over here, is accepting our own identity and even, able to communicate that with the world. So I'm so happy for you, Nathan, that this has happened for you and that you're so comfortable in your skin, and that makes us happy and also teaches each one of us lesson wherever we are, whoever we are, that even if you feel that you know who you are, sometimes it takes time to understand in whatever form it is. So thank you so much, Nathan, for actually telling us what is the real essence of living in your own skin and being so passionate about who you are. And now you've also addressed something which I actually wanted to kind of ask you, which you've already answered, is that how was it to be, the sole ranger, the lone ranger going over there and, doing all these amazing things? And did you ever feel the need of kind of, coming out of that secret society of yours and meeting other people to be able to grow? So I think that's where you left off, and we want to kind of jump on that bandwagon right now and understand what things happened from there. Like I just have seen that you have won an Australian eChallenge Entrepreneurship Award. How did that change from voiceover artist to the entrepreneurship world date for you?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, because I think the analogy of being a voiceover artist and sticking with the theme of the secret society, I mean, when you do a voiceover, you're in a little booth, right? Like you're kind of, and in many cases in the closet, because a lot of us record from our closets as voiceover artists. And I think I realized that it was really mirroring what I was stuck in. I wanted to connect more with people, and I read a lot of scripts as a voiceover artist. You get given some words that someone else has written or a marketing agency has written, and that becomes your voice. I mean, it's still your voice, but you're saying other people's words. And I think that analogy wasn't lost on me, that I was being heard by millions of people every day, and yet not one person in the world really knew me. And maybe I didn't even know me. And when do I get to write my own script? When do I get to understand my script and unpack everything? And so I started studying psychology online while I was still doing a lot of voiceover work. And I started traveling too, still doing my voiceovers on the run, but then meeting a lot of people and seeing new cultures and tapping into new feelings and understandings. And it really opened my mind up. And I think by that point, I realized that I want to not just be a voice for brands, I want to be a voice for me. And I want to help other people feel seen and heard and understood, and that they can have a voice, and that anyone can really be a voice artist that's just about connecting with our true, authentic essence. And that really pulled me into studying psychology, understanding how we communicate, understanding how emotions work, understanding how we can better know who we are and better navigate our own emotions. So that became my PhD. And then I started off the back of this eChallenge Social Entrepreneurship Award. I was able to found the Mood Institute, and we're really doing that. We teach organizations and we teach leaders and we teach individuals, anyone that's passionate about knowing themselves. We teach them how to feel their feelings, how to understand them, and how to tap into their best selves.
Wow, this is such an interesting aspect of your professional journey. I like to kind of highlight the fact that when you, I see, I think I've sort of making a note of this, that when you feel something, you really take action about it. And I think this has been something recurring in your journey. And when you were a really established voiceover artist and you were definitely doing well for yourself, you felt the need of a certain change over there. And you started with the means that was possible for you on the go, which was online training, online course. And from there, you grew out of that, you learned something, and you also won an award over there. And now you have your own institute where you're teaching people how they can use their voice and they can be heard. And this is amazing, because I feel you've started something back then that was not very, a mainstream kind of a sort of a job or a business, or people really did not think about it much. But today it is the need of the hour. And I think you're way ahead in the game, because you bring such a great wealth of experience with yourself and a very, very amazing voice. And given that I was fortunate enough to be at one of your workshops, and we have learned a lot about, the tone, the voice, the pitch, the volume, a
Well
lot of
done. Grade A student, Ashani. Very impressed.
yeah. And I like to say that we were also really, really blessed to kind of go through the 30-day challenge as well. So I want to kind of know a bit about Mood Institute. What is your top 3 learnings running this institute today, given that it's a lot about emotions and also about the voice? What have you learned so far running this institute, if you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, my goodness. There's probably so many more than 3. But if I can I reckon the first one that comes to mind isn't very uplifting, but it's really hard. I think doing anything is really hard, and anything worth doing is really hard, but it's really a constant decision every day that this is what I want to do. It also, I've learned how to tap into some courage and some bravery, because, I love that quote, speak even if your voice shakes. Because, courage is really feeling the fear, but doing it anyway, right? And so some days I'm like, I don't know if I can do this, but I love, that little growth mindset that was ever present in little Nath kind of pops up and goes, yeah, I know we're scared, but let's give it a go. So I think courage is a lot of what I've learned. And then finally, I would say passion is just such a great thing that I've been trying to understand, because I'm so passionate about understanding our emotions and understanding how we can tap into it using our voice and our whole body and presence, and connecting with people and being really seen and heard and understood for who we are. And for so long, I thought that if I express myself too much, people might think I'm, too much or too gay or too this or too that. But it's so lovely to let go a little bit and to say, you know what, at the end of the day, I've lived a lot of my life, probably half of my life now, in my secret society. What would happen if I let people feel the passion that I've felt bubbling up inside for so long? What happens if I just let that out? And so I think it's been really lovely with the Mood Institute to be able to let that passion trickle out. And it's been nice to see people be a little bit inspired by that.
I love all those top 3 learnings that you were able to share with us, given that there are many that you can actually share with us. So thank you so much for giving us the top 3. And I definitely can vouch that we can see the passion coming through, bubbling through, overflowing, whatever you speak about, what you do, why you do, how you love it so much, and how you have come to the place where you are today with Mood Institute, and what is Mood Institute really helping people with. So thank you so much, Nathan. I wish we could chat a bit more, but I think it has been lovely, lovely chatting with you today, from knowing the little Nathan to moving into this amazing world with sheer passion, determination, and finally be able to, be true to yourself and true to everyone around you, and actually making us learn the biggest lesson of our life is to find our own identity and be accepting it, and also showing to the world that what you can bring to the table. And I love it, Nathan. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I always request our guest speakers, before they take our leave, to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that they really resonate with.
Well, I think one of my favorite sayings, and it really ties in with what we've been discussing today, is that you've got to feel it to heal it. You've got to feel it to heal it. And the reason I like that is because so often we don't want to dive into all of those things going in. We want to shut it all off. But I think that when we feel it and we get brave, we get courageous, we have a growth mindset, we can really dive into all that stuff. That's when we start healing, and that's when we can start stepping into that best step that we need to take in our lives.
Definitely echo that thought of yours and the saying. And I want to add one last bit, in fact, reinforce what Nathan has told us today, is that expressing your feelings, feeling your feelings is actually an act of courage. You need to be brave to be able to face your feelings, because they could be anything. And I'm sure all of us know that how wild, vivid, or timid they could be at certain times. So this has been such an amazing and refreshing chat today, this amazing session. I am very sure people who are listening to us today they have energized, especially with your amazing voice and your really, really, really heart-touching story and your journey. And I wish you all the best, Nathan. Thank you so much for being on my first step ever.
Thanks, Ashani. Thanks for having me.
If you're still glued together on this episode, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And if you really want to hear more such stories from around the globe, then subscribe to my First Step Ever podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google, and Spotify, whichever platform you prefer. Please do give ratings, and please do write your comments. And you can directly reach out to me on my First Step Ever _IN. That's my Instagram handle. A little about myself. I have always loved performing on stage, acting, speaking, and just emoting myself. So I use these mediums different ways so that I can connect with people, help them, empower them, infotain them, which is to inform them and entertain them. If you would like to collaborate for any opportunities, more than welcome to connect with me on my Instagram handle. Thank you.